What's going on, guys? Welcome to the pilot episode of Man of Mischief. This is our Loki in review series, guys. My name is Kyle, your host. We got the brand new Loki shirt here, Project Potter hat, of course. If you guys haven't been to the channel before, welcome to Project Potter. We got the new, this is the brand new MCU setup. We moved the MCU couch. We got this proper display here, all the MCU movies in the Infinity Saga. So really excited for this one, guys. This is the Loki in review series, so we're doing kind of similar format to our other reviews. This is just a solo review for now. We'll see, maybe some group episodes in there, I don't know, we'll find out. But it's just me for now, though, guys. Your host, Kyle. We're going to be doing a recap, sort of strongest character, weakest character, a score out of 10. There's only 6 episodes, I think, so yeah, go check out Reviewers Assemble, guys. Endgame should be dropping in a couple of weeks, so keep an eye on the channel. I've been dropping the custom covers I had a good time with, so all of our MC reviews are up there except for Endgame, which will be dropping in the next couple of weeks, so keep an eye out for that. But this Loki review will be up probably tonight, the time you're watching this, probably Wednesday night, maybe Thursday morning, I don't know, but yeah, here we go. Hey guys, so kicking off the recap here, so it's awesome because we start off 2012 New York, dude, right where the Avengers 1 takes place, and it's really awesome because there's a cold open and it comes in, and we get the title cards, which I love, which they use in Endgame, dude. It was so cool. Yeah, 2012 New York City, and we're just right into it. And this is like a recap, but it just kind of reminds you, like, hey, by the way, this is when this is happening, and this is an awesome moment as well. So this is when Loki is captured. We get a great scene where Loki changes to Captain America for a minute, and he makes fun of him. He says, like, I'm so righteous or whatever. Not like he did in Dark World, but this was still a good bit. And then it's cool because we see like a little scene of Ant-Man, and Loki's in the lobby as like they're arresting Loki, and he's looking around, and like the box is moving around, and like they say maximum capacity to Hulk, and Hulk goes down the stairs, which is funny, and they get downstairs, and Hulk. Tony, who's like dressed as the SWAT guy, he goes and gets the briefcase as they're trying to put the Infinity Stones back, and that's when Hulk breaks out the door, knocks over Tony. The Tesseract hops out of the case, and then Loki picks it up, and then he warps, and we didn't know where he went. Well, now we finally find out where Loki went in 2012. So this is cool because this was like kind of a big MCU plot hole, and they have all this space to work with, no pun intended, and so they literally are going to go into where has Loki been between like when Avengers happened and then when we saw him later towards Infinity War. We kind of find that answer here, so really, really awesome. We get a really cool Loki like intro where it's like changing all the different styles here. There's a very unique style to the show where it's like sci-fi but like kind of like a 70s retro, really cool aesthetic too, where there's like old school cartoons in there. Really awesome stuff. But we drop back in, and Loki literally drops out of the sky. He ends up in Mongolia, like the Mongolian desert, and he just takes off his like face guard, which I thought was kind of weird because it was like on him before, and then he just like pulls it off like it's nothing. Maybe it broke in the fall, I don't know. But he's there, and the Mongols come over, and he like looks, his eyes like dart back and forth, and Tom Hiddleston is so damn good in this whole episode, really. He's always excellent as Loki. But man, it's his show, and he's the star of the show for sure in this one. But he looks back, and then he like gets up, and he like tries to present himself, and he's like, I've come to rule these people. He's like, I'm Loki. He's like, of Asgard. And the people are speaking in Mongolian, and they're like, who are you? Why did you come to our home? And he's like, you know what? Forget it. And then we see like this orange door come through, and it's like a portal, and the Time Variant police come in. The Time Variant Agency, I think is what they're called, TVA. They come in, they're wearing like kind of SWAT gear, but they have like these cool like time batons, and they come in and they're like, okay, you need to come with us, like you're under arrest for disrupting the timeline. And like I think they say the sacred timeline. And Loki's like, oh yeah, I'm under arrest for the sacred timeline. He's like, this is your last chance. And they're like, all right. And then the girl, the officer, she takes the baton and she smacks him, and it's like one of the coolest scenes in the MCU, dude. So she hits Loki, and it's like slow-mo, and his mouth, just his mouth is like moving, and then he's like slowly falling over, and then she just reaches her hand over and slaps like a time collar around him, and she's like, yep, right now you're moving at 1/16 of the speed of normal time, but she's like, you're feeling all that pain in real time though. And I'm like, wow, dude, that's so cool, and it visually looked awesome, because like Tom Hiddleston or Loki's like slowly falling, but his mouth is it just keeps like bubbling, like it's unreal. I thought that was an awesome scene. I was like, as soon as I saw that scene, I was like, I'm in, dude. So they arrest Loki and they take him in to the Time Variant Agency. There's a great like back and forth, but before we get that, we do see Owen Wilson. His character, I didn't catch his name. I'll probably edit it in here, but it's Owen Wilson. And so you're thinking he's gonna be like a funny guy, but he does have bits of comedy in here. But he plays a relatively serious character too. It's I really like his character in this one, but he's in France in 1854, I think it is. And he's investigating something. There's like a painting of a devil, and he's like, "Oh, who did this?" Although they weren't looking at anything, so I was like, "Who did what? What are you talking about?" But there's like a little girl that runs in, and he's like, "It's just a child." He's like, "I'm sorry, my partner is an imbecile," and he says in French, and the guy says like, "Hey, I speak all of the languages in the timeline too, jackass." And Owen Wilson goes over and talks to the little girl, and he's like, "Do you know who did this?" Blah blah blah. They're trying to find out, and then she's got like something blue in her teeth, and he's like, "What's the blue? What is that?" Oh, sorry, I almost forgot. So Owen Wilson has like a tablet almost, and he draws a little stick figure, and he gives it to the girl, and he says like, "Point, point," and it's so cool because she hits it, and then it like projects up here, and then the stick figure's like running, and I was like, "Wow, dude, that's so cool." And this was obviously in it was either 1894. It might have been 15. I think it's 1594. I'll put the right time in here. But it's so cool because obviously they've never seen any sort of technology like that, and we've never seen that technology. So it's so cool that she taps the button and the man starts running, and he's like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool." And he's like, "Oh, the devil bringing gifts," because she gives him like a blue. It's like a pack of gum or something. I don't really know, but that's like a bigger mystery that we're not going to get answers to this episode. So yeah, Loki's brought in. Amazing sequence, dude, where he goes in and he sees the guy at the front desk, and they take the Tesseract, and he's like, "Be very careful with that." The guy's like, "Can I know what it is first?" He's like, I'd like to know. And Loki's like, "It's the Tesseract." He's like, "Okay, be very careful with it." And Loki's in his armor, and he's saying like, "I'm the god of mischief, blah blah blah." He's like, "You've made a mistake." They're like, "Shut up, dude, we know what we're doing." They take him into like this great sequence where there's like a line where it's like roped off, and they're like, "Take a number," and there's one other guy in front of him, and he goes, "I don't want to take a number," and they're like, "Take a number," and so he just like walks by and he goes up there, and then Loki comes in and they're like, "Take a number," and Loki's like, "There's two of us in here, dude," and they're like, "Sir, take a number," and he's like, so he takes the number, and then Tom Hiddleston is great because he walks over and he like goes through the little like clicky like door, rotating door that you go through, like sports games and stuff, and he goes through and he like takes the ticket and he stares at the guy, and then as he's walking he just like keeps staring at him. It's so funny. The humor is really good in this episode. And so he's walking through, and the guy up front there, they're like, "Okay, where's your ticket?" And the guy's like, "I tried to get a ticket." He's like, "The guy asked me to get a ticket and I couldn't get a ticket," or something. I thought this character kind of was dumb, but basically it shows they're like, he like ready to attack the guard, and the guard just hits him with like a baton or whatever, and it like evaporates him. Like he's just gone now. And Loki's like, "Oh," and then he's like searching drastically for his ticket, and then he like takes it out and he just holds it up. So just a funny moment there. That character I thought kind of sucked, but he was just that annoying, rambunctious character that's gonna die anyway. But the way he died, where he dies from the inside out, super cool. So Loki's brought in like processing, and he goes over and they're like, he initially goes in like an elevator with like a robot with like a funny smiley face, and it's trying to like poke at him, and he's like, "Nope." He's like, Don't do it. Don't you dare." And then the robot like takes all of his clothes off in like one bit, and obviously it's like covering him, but Tom Hiddleston looking jacked in this show, I gotta say. He's been working out for this one. But he falls immediately, and then he like is put into a jumpsuit, so somehow they probably just like appeared on him, whatever. He goes down the floor, and then the guy says like, he hands him a big stack of papers. There's like a guy at a desk, and Tom Hiddleston's movements are so good in this one because he's like scared of everything. Like he's like, "What the hell's going on here?" And he's like, "Please sign this document." He's like, "This is everything you've ever said." He's like, "Sign here," and he's like, "What?" And then it like prints out, and he says, "And this," and it just says "what" on the paper. And he's like, "This is absurd," and it's like, and he takes the piece of paper, and he's like, "And this," and Loki's looking at him, and then he just like, I thought he was gonna like. It would have been a funny bit if he like looked through and he flipped to a random page and it was like one of his best quotes or something. But instead he just like stood there and signed it. And I was like, dude, that was a missed opportunity. Or you could have had some of his favorite lines, or even lines that we haven't heard before. And he's like, I didn't say this, and they would have been like, oh, actually, 2013 and this time, or whatever, 2008, whatever. But it's okay. So he goes through, and then he's like, all right. Then he falls through like a trap door to the next floor, and Loki's like, what the hell's going on, dude? And it's so great because Tom Hiddleston is like questioning everything as he's going through. He goes through like a metal detector, but the guy asks him like, do you have as far as you know, do you have a soul, or are you like, you're not a robot or anything? And he's like, as far as I know, he's like, do people not know if they're robots? And he's like, you'd be surprised. And he's like, yes, I have a soul. And then he's like, but wait, what if I am a robot but I didn't know it? And the guy is like, the machine will melt you from the inside out. He's like, can you step forward? And I was like, oh, man, it's so funny the way he says it. The show is just riddled with humor. It's really, really good. But he goes through and he's good to go. Eventually he gets into like his court date. When they step forth, they're like, okay, Loki, I don't even remember what his last name is, but I don't know if we've ever heard his last name. We usually just hear like Loki, Odin's son, or Loki of Asgard or whatever, so it's like Lewison or something? I don't know. But maybe that changed since the movies. But Loki steps up and he's like, look, I'm in the wrong place. He's like, oh, sorry, there's one thing I already forgot. When he's waiting in line there, he goes, what am I even doing here? And there's a funny scene where the PA comes on and it's like, you may be asking yourself, what are you doing here? And then we get a whole sequence. Sorry, I forgot this part. This is an important part. There's a whole video tutorial where it says like, we here at the Time Variant Agency, we protect all the time in the world, and it's like by the 3 Time Lords, and they're like, there used to be this big multiverse time battle, like time war, where the timelines were fighting each other, and he's like, and then to put it all together, we just put it into one timeline. And he's like, we protect the sacred timeline, and they're like, if you step out of your timeline, it creates a nexus, which is like, you're branching out and it affects everything. And they're like, if those nexuses are unchecked, then that's going to be the multiverse of madness. And I was like, oh, like the Doctor Strange movie that's coming out, which should be super cool. But they're obviously very heavy on multiverse stuff. It's so cool. It's awesome, dude. So basically, Loki's like, oh yeah. He's like, oh, so I disrupted the timeline. He's like, no, everything I did is because of my own power. And they're like, no, everything you did is because that's what the path you were set to do. And so he eventually goes to court and. He's like, there's been a mistake. He's like, if you really are in charge of all space and time, he's like, you should be tracking down the Avengers. He's like, they're the ones who are like stealing the stones or whatever. And they're like, no, the Avengers did what they were supposed to do. They're like, you taking the Tesseract and using it was not supposed to happen. So they're like, you are the Nexus. And Loki's like, okay. And he's like fighting it the whole time. And then Owen Wilson comes in, and he's like, he basically takes him under his wing, and Loki's like, I should just burn this whole place down. And he's like, Owen Wilson's like, well, he's like, you can start with my office. And Loki's like, this place is a nightmare. He's like, no, that's a different department. And he's like, that would help if you could burn that down. They also do, when they put the collar on Loki, he tries to like use his powers and like put his armor on, and they're like, no, the band, the time band or whatever, eliminates all powers, and you're like, you can't use any powers, which is important. There's a great back and forth that I didn't touch on with the judge and Loki, and he's like, and what do you do exactly? She's like, dictate the power of time or whatever, and then he's like, okay, and the Time Lords, she's like, they dictate the power of time, and we go off their dictation. She's like, honestly, you're wasting my time, and he's like, right. It's just really awesome because Loki is just asking all of the questions that we're asking, and like, where have these people been? What are they doing? And it's really, really cool, and I love that Marvel's like branching out onto like trying to explain these things and like having a meaning for everything. It's so awesome. That's all good and well, but Loki's like, I thought there was no magic in here, and they look out and there's like a city with floating cars and stuff, and Owen Wilson's like, there isn't any magic here. And so I'm like, but how is all that stuff happening though? But I'm sure we'll get that explained in future episodes. But Loki still is like, he doesn't believe it. Owen Wilson takes him into like a room where it's almost like a little Apple computer, and he's like, what are we gonna do here? He's like, well, he's like, I'm gonna sit down and talk to you, and he's like, we're gonna watch some of your highlights basically. And Loki's like, your games are not gonna work on me. And he's like, Owen Wilson is kind of like interrogating him, but also like just like trying to find out, like he says, what makes Loki tick. And so they go through all these different events, where he's like, oh yeah, he's like, this is where you took out Agent Coulson, because he's like, oh, you don't want to cross me, the last guy that crossed me didn't end up so well, and he's like, you mean Agent Coulson? And he like plays the video, and he's like, yeah, he's like, but didn't the Avengers succeed because they literally avenged him? And Loki's like, he's like, I don't know what this is. Owen Wilson shows him like, hey, you know, if you don't do that, you know, then you're taken captive to Asgard, which is like Thor Dark World, I think. And so it's like all stuff that we've seen, which is really cool. But of course, this is 2012 Loki. This Loki has not seen any of that. This Loki hasn't met Thanos yet. This Loki hasn't done anything. It's really, really cool because we have all this knowledge, and then like obviously the Time Agency does as well. So Owen Wilson is showing him like, yep, well, you do this, and then he's like, well, you know, you betray Thor and you think you send the Dark Elves who attack Asgard over to Thor, but you actually send them to your mother, and then he shows the mother dying. And he's like, this isn't real. He's like, this is a joke. He's like, it's all real, dude. And he's just showing him different things. And they sit down, and Owen Wilson's like, why do you hurt people? He's like, do you think you're a good person? He's like, why do you do that? And you know, Loki tells him about how he's like, he was born to rule, and he's like, rule. He's like, so what do you want to rule exactly? And he's like, Midgard. He's like, okay, so Earth. He's like, and what would you do when you rule Earth? And he's like, I forget what he says or if he doesn't answer it, but he's like, you know, a guy with so much potential. He's like, don't you think you want to do more than just rule? He's like, how about space? Or he's like, what's after Earth? And Loki's like, the 9 realms of Asgard or whatever. And he's like, okay, so space. And he's like, if you're gonna mock me, and he's like, no. He's like, Owen Wilson's like, it's cool, dude. I'm trying to actually find out. But he's like, yeah, why not set your sights farther? And you have this back and forth, and Loki still doesn't take him seriously. He's like, oh, this is an illusion, blah, blah, blah. And Owen Wilson's got a tag on him, and like every time Loki tries to like, come at him, he just like rewinds him, or he loops him back. There's a funny scene where like Loki goes to get up, and he loops him back, and he's like, I was just trying to make a point. He's like, I just want to stand up to make a point. And he's like, oh, sorry, go ahead. And he gets up, and you know, he tells him all this stuff. It's really, really awesome. And then there's the security guard, the woman that kind of like initially arrested Loki and hit him with a 1/16th baton. She comes in, she's like, hey, there's been an issue, like there's a situation. And Owen Wilson was like, there's always a situation. And so he's like, hey, stay here. So Owen Wilson eventually goes to leave to find out about the situation. Somehow or another, the guard that comes in after Loki, and of course Loki, who's been like completely like disabled by this collar and everything, Loki pulls a fast one and like somehow gets like the clicker. I think like the guard comes over to like hit Loki, and Loki like puts her arm behind her back, and then like eventually gets the control, and then like takes his time collar off and puts it on her. So then there's this really awesome scene where she's like coming at him, and he just like rewinds it, and then he like turns it back, and she's like, stop it, and then he like rewinds it, puts it back, and then he goes faster and faster, and it's really funny. But Loki's now free of that, and so he like I think he initially gets like the time control for himself, and then he gets out. Either way, he gets the call off eventually, and then he goes like kind of searching through the building, and he goes back to the guy. His name is Casey. There's a really funny scene where he like sneaks over, and he's like threatening him, and he's like Casey, he's like look, I don't know who you are, but he's like, I need that object, the Tesseract from earlier. He's like, I'm gonna gut you like a fish. And he goes, what's a fish? And he goes, what? He's like, how do you not know what a fish is? And he's like, I've spent my whole life behind this desk. And he's like, still, man. He's like, you don't know what a fish is? Really, really funny scene. That guy is from a lot of things. I forget what, but I'll edit his name in here. I love him as an actor. He's really funny always. And so, yeah, Loki is like, he's like, I just want to know what I'm being threatened with before, like, you know. And he's like, death. You're being threatened with death, okay? Loki's like, dude, I'm going to kill you. Really funny. And then like he opens the box, he gets the Tesseract back, he's like, yes, finally. And then he looks in the box, what's in the box, and he finds a bunch, he's like, Infinity Stones. He's like, how did you get these? He's like, oh, those? He's like, I don't know, some of the guys use them as like paperweights, and there's like a bunch of Infinity Stones. And this is when Loki realizes like, oh, like this means nothing, because they keep telling him like, look, you can't go back to your timeline, we need to like reset it, blah blah blah. He's like, everything you're gonna do, you have a set path you're not gonna do. And Loki keeps telling them all episodes like, no, I do what I do because that's like, I was born to rule, and like those are my choices. And they're like, no dude, you do exactly what you're gonna do because that's how the timeline goes. and it's like makes everything feel like really insignificant in a way, because like Loki doesn't believe it at all at first, but then he kind of starts to believe it when he sees the Infinity Stones in the box, where the guy's like, "Oh, we just use them as paperweights," and he's like, "Wow, even an Infinity Stone here has no power," which is crazy. The whole Infinity Saga is about getting those stones, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, we just have them in like a box here, and they don't really do anything." And I'm like, "Wow, that's so interesting. I love that they did that." But that's when Loki kind of realizes, like, "Oh yeah, these guys." They know what they're talking about, because the whole time Loki's like, "Oh yeah, the sacred timeline." He's like, "Yeah, you're doing this. You're doing like." He's like, "You guys are full of shit," and then he finally starts to realize, like, "Oh my god, they're right." Like, because they just prove him wrong over and over. And so Loki eventually escapes back to like the room with Owen Wilson with the projector, and he starts going through. And now not only is he seeing stuff from the past, but he starts seeing the future stuff. So again, all stuff that we've seen, but it's really, really good because Tom Hiddleston kills it here. He takes this all so seriously now, where he like, this is where he's like, I have to believe what I'm seeing. Like, my eyes are seeing it, and like he doesn't want to believe it initially, but he's like, it's obviously they can't, like, there's no way they could fake this footage. Like, this is real, what they're telling him. Like, this is a timeline, this is what happens. And so we see like him betraying Thor. We see what's his name, Anthony Hopkins as Odin in Ragnarok, when he tells him like, "Remember this place, isn't it beautiful?" And then he like fades away, and Loki starts like breaking down. And then eventually we see Loki, who is like taunting Thanos, and Loki doesn't. He knows it must be real, but obviously he has no idea who Thanos is at this point. So he's probably wondering, like, I would like to know if he thought like, is that Thanos? Or I hope like he asks maybe down the line, like, who is that? Who, like, it would be really cool if they can connect that. But it's super, super messed up, because Loki, we know obviously he died. Spoilers if you haven't seen Endgame, I don't know what you're doing. This puppy right here. Oh no, sorry, it's Infinity War. It's the beginning of Infinity War that he dies. So obviously Hulk fights Thanos. Hulk loses. Thanos picks him up. Loki's famous last words, he says, "You will never be a god," which is amazing. And then he crushes his neck. And that's how Loki dies. And Loki's looking at that, and he looks away. And I'm like, dude, how cool is it that Loki saw his own death? And it says like end of file. And like, he knows that, number one, he's like, wow, that's how my story ends. And it's like that age-old question, like, do you want to know when you're gonna die? And it's like Loki sees when he's going to die. He doesn't probably know exactly when, but maybe he can look at it. But he's like, he literally sees himself get crushed, his neck get crushed by Thanos. And I'm like, dude, so cool that they put that in there. So that's what really like messes him up, and he like can't believe it. And that's where he realizes like everything, like all hope is lost. Like, he has to listen to these guys because they know what they're talking about. And it's sad that they're like, you have a predetermined fate, and it's just like, man, that stuff is so like depressing. But I love how cool it is. I love all the multiverse stuff and all that stuff. So that's when he kind of realizes it. So he kind of sits down in the corner. Eventually Owen Wilson comes back. I hope I'm not skipping over anything too important, guys. I'm just kind of going off of memory. Owen Wilson comes back in, and he's like, "Hey, nowhere to run, Loki." And he's like, "I'm not going back, am I?" He's like, Loki understands, like, I gotta work with you. And Owen Wilson's like, "Hey, you know, there's a variant that are killing our guys. Like, we need your help." And he's like, "Well, why do you need my help?" And he goes, "Because the variant is you." And I was like, oh. I kind of wish that they didn't tell us that. I wish that they would have done at the very end, because at the end we see, one thing I didn't touch on too, when they go to see, when they capture Loki in the Mongolian desert, they said, "Oh, just reset the timeline." And then they put down a little like capsule, and it like, they like, click the canister or whatever, and there's like smoke or whatever in there, and it like starts just going in the ground and like reshaping the ground. It literally is like resetting the timeline. It's so cool. What an awesome idea. And so at the end, the combat squad goes over, and there's like this burning village or whatever, and there's like a scepter or something, but it's like a future scepter. It's really awesome looking. And they say something like, "Oh, it smells like oil," or whatever, which I didn't understand, but they said like, "Oh, some jackass probably found a time machine and came back here to get rich," or something, which is interesting. But that squad, they're kind of like, to relax with it, where they're like, "Oh, whatever, like, we see this all the time." They're like, "Yeah, set the reset timeline, let's get out here." And so the guy puts the capsule down, and then they're like, "Wait, there's someone over there," and there's like a hooded figure, and then they like drop a match or whatever, and it sets the whole field on fire, and there's like gas everywhere, which is maybe why he said it smells like oil or tastes like oil. I don't know. But the gas goes and it burns all of them alive, and as the guy's like reaching for the canister, he can't get it, and so we get like a hooded figure. It would have been way cooler to me if that like reveal, if they like slowly walked in the camera and that was Loki, or even if we just kept it to see who it was. But the fact that they're like the variant is Loki, I didn't love that they told us that. I would have liked that to be a bigger mystery, or I would have liked them to just show Loki's face at the end, and then I would have been like, oh, so I think that's Loki. But now I'm also kind of like, maybe that's a separate character, and in the Loki variant they're chasing is different, and they think it's this guy, but they're two different people, and someone really is messing up the timelines. I don't know, but that's how the episode ends, guys, and it is so damn good. Okay, guys, so we did Strongest Avenger for MCU reviews. This one's going to be Born to Rule, which is same thing, my favorite character. It's Tom Hiddleston, dude, as Loki. Owen Wilson was a very close second, but their bromance, their connection, their like intellectual sparring that they're doing, awesome stuff. But I mean, Loki is just, Tom Hiddleston has been so good. He was born to play the role of Loki, dude. No one cared about Loki, and then Tom Hiddleston came in and he's so good. I would say maybe Thor 1 is like his weakest performance because the character was too serious and they didn't know about what. As soon as they found like his serious, his like comical side, as soon as they found out that he's like always kind of losing, and I talked in our MC review about how I didn't love that he was like the big baddie for Avengers, and Avengers 1 is kind of weird, but now like putting this context into it, it's so cool because like Avengers 1 is such a huge part of the MCU, that like it's so cool when like there's a scene where Owen Wilson shows it, and it's like the event, he says like, you bring out the best in others or whatever, or like make people step up or whatever, and it's like the Avengers circle up, and I'm like, oh dude, it's so iconic at this point. Awesome stuff, and they're just expanding the universe. But the second that Tom Hiddleston was back on screen and he was just killing it, he said like, I'm gonna rule. He's like, this is just a detour on my stop. It was so awesome. He's really funny. He's like questioning everything. He just is amazing in this character, in this role, and it's like he's always been so good. As soon as I heard that we were getting a Loki series, I was like, dude, of course we are, because Tom Hiddleston is so good as Loki, and it's like we need more time with that character, and for them to kind of, this is like sort of like a prequel, for them to put him back here, it's so awesome. So I love that Tom Hiddleston like questions everything, and he thinks he's like hot shit, and then Owen Wilson is like, dude, not only can we control you if we have you the collar, like we can control you, not only do we turn your powers off, but like he's like, we control all the time, dude. He's like, we're because Loki's like, oh, so this is the all-powerful thing of the universe, whatever, and he's like, yeah. And Loki's like, well, why haven't I ever heard of you? They're like, because you haven't stepped out of your path before. So they're like, why would you hear from us? And it's so cool to think that they just know like everything. But I know Marvel's doing like the Eternals movie coming up, which I feel kind of weird about, but it's also, I think, kind of the same thing where it's like these all-powerful creatures outside, so that should be awesome. But I'm more and more open to this idea. I love multiverse shit, but specifically for this segment, Tom Hiddleston, dude, he's funny, he's charming, he's charismatic, he's got like, he's almost got like an action hero sort of thing. He's always getting a step ahead. He's like, oh, god of mischief. And even though they like kind of take him down a peg, there's still scenes where like when Loki gets control, you're like, oh yeah, dude, Tom Hiddleston's back. Like, Loki's always pulling some shit. It's like when Thor sees him in, I think it's in Ragnarok, where Loki, or it might be Dark World, I don't remember, but Loki's like all beat up or whatever, and then like Thor I think it's Ragnarok, because he throws it, and then Korg is like, stupid piss off, ghost. But like Loki's pretending to be there. He's always like trying to thief the god of mischief. Like, he's always trying to make an illusion, which is funny because he says, oh, this place is just an illusion. So he's trying to like relate it to, he doesn't understand that they own the timeline, and that they control all like time and space basically. And so he tries to like put it in his brain as to something that he knows. So he's like, oh, it's just an illusion, because he's done illusions millions of times. So he thinks they're just trying to trick him, and it's like, no, dude, this is real. So yeah, just awesome. And Tom Hiddleston was my favorite character in the episode by far. Okay, guys, for the weakest character, we are doing Get Help. This is the Get Help Award, which is one of my favorite scenes in Ragnarok. If you haven't seen Thor Ragnarok, dude, go watch it because it's amazing. But when Loki and Thor say, we're not doing get help, and then they come in the elevator and they're like, I think it's Thor carrying Loki, like, get help, my brother. And then he throws them at him, awesome stuff. But the Get Help award is for the character that I thought was least effective, my least liked character. It's got to be the security guard. The way she comes in, she's like trying to act tough, and I was just like, it just feels like you're being fake tough. But like the fact that she kept coming at Loki, and Loki kept looking at her, and there was supposed to be like this rivalry, but I'm just like, dude, I don't know. She gets him up, like the one up initially where she hits him in the face, but then like Loki understands how that works. The fact that Loki gets the better of her so easily, I was like, aren't you supposed to be like this highly trained time like cop, and you should know what Loki does, and you let Loki get the jump on you still? I was just like, I don't know, that seemed a little weak to me. But I just thought she was like very basic, like cookie cutter TV character. Or Owen Wilson's character I thought was really like deep and complex and incredible, and obviously he's a great actor. But I just thought this side character, like the SWAT bodyguard, whatever, I was just like, man, you're just cookie cutter character, like something from like Incredible Hulk, honestly, is like what I would think of. So wins my Get Help award for sure this week. Okay guys, for a score for this one, it's hard to think about how the scale is going to go. I tend to score high. I feel like I'm scoring high a lot. But I have to be honest, watching this episode, dude, this I think is like next level Marvel shit. This is top tier. This is next tier Marvel. We've never seen anything like this before. And, you know, it started with WandaVision, where that was so unique and different. And, you know, people were like, is this going to work? I don't know. And WandaVision was great. Falcon Winter Soldier was really good, but that was more like classic Winter Soldier style action. This particular show is closer to WandaVision, where it's like super, super creative and different. But it's like, I've never, like, it just makes my head spin. I love these shows where like you go on like a Reddit thread or like a forum, and it's like all these theories, like what could happen? Who is this? What does this mean? If this happened, then this happened. It's like timeline stuff. When Endgame happened, people were like, but if they went back here, how do they do this? And how did Cap stay back there? Blah, blah, blah. Really interesting stuff. I love time travel stuff. Always confuses me. But I love the idea. And if you think too hard about it, it doesn't make sense. But it's like with these shows and this universe too, it's so fun. With that being said, this episode absolutely blew me away. I also want to point out the score. Dude, the score is so cool. It sounded like sci-fi, but like just weird too, almost like Twilight Zone, but also just like really modern. I don't even know. It was just awesome. I thought the score was excellent throughout. Yeah, the characters, obviously, there were some really good shots in here. Nothing really looked low budget to me. This felt like next level. Between like the stuff where they hit Loki slow and just like him constantly looping back. The projector stuff I wasn't crazy about. Oh, I almost forgot about the DB Cooper scene. I don't know who DB Cooper is. I don't read the comics or anything. But I love that scene where Loki's like on an airplane, and he hands like a note to the flight attendant. She's like, anything else I can help you with today, sir? And he's like, well, he hands her like a note, and she's like, oh, thank you. And she's probably think he's like hitting on her or whatever, and he's got sunglasses, he like winks at her, and then he's like, oh ma'am, he's like, you should read that note. He's like, I have a bomb. And he just like, he's got like a suitcase right next to it, and then like the cops pull up, they land. I don't know, see, I'd have to go back and rewatch because I didn't really understand that, because I thought they had to like land the plane or something, but then I thought I saw the cop cars coming, but then also he jumped out. I don't know, but eventually he like puts a parachute on or whatever, and he's got like a bag of money, and he jumps out of a plane, and he's like, oh, this is gonna be great. He's like, Heimdall, Thor. He's like, I'm coming or whatever, and he jumps out, and then not the Tesseract, what is the gate called that Heimdall manages? I'm blanking on it. Oh, that's gonna drive me nuts. Shit. I'm gonna have to edit it in. I can't remember it on the spot, but the Bifrost. The Bifrost. So he jumps out. He's got sunglasses on. He's in like a suit, and then the Bifrost comes down and hits him, and he transports to Asgard, and like money goes flying everywhere. I didn't really understand the point of that scene, or if I'm sure it's like a famous comic character, but it was hilarious and it was awesome. And I was just like, this is the fun Loki that we want, dude. Like, this should be a fun series, a crazy series, a confusing series, but awesome, like, interdimensional stuff. Yeah, it just blew me away. And so with that being said, guys, it is a 10 out of 10. If I could give it a 12 out of 10, I would. I was itching for the next episode. When they ended the episode with those guys being like, all right, let's just get back, and like the music's going, it's like, bah, and it like he drops the match or whatever, and it lights them all up. I was like, oh, dude, this is dark, and this is some awesome shit. Like, this was amazing stuff, dude. I couldn't believe it. Just makes me immediately want to, like, when is next Wednesday? Is it coming? Like, do we know? Does time work differently here? It's just awesome. Also, Loki does ask, like, Owen Wilson how long he's been here, and he's like, oh, I don't know. He's like, time works differently here. He's like, I told you that. So also helps explain, like, if Loki's stuck in a time agency, is this Loki our Loki that goes to Infinity War? Is this a different Loki? Obviously, there's a Loki variant, which is really cool twist, because I'm like, oh, I would have kind of liked a different Loki, but obviously we're going to get, like, endgame level fight, dude, where it's going to be Loki versus Loki, just like Cap versus Cap. That is America's ass. Like, dude, we're going to get a line like that, I'm sure, and it's going to be sick, and I cannot wait. I love multiverse stuff because they can just go, oh yeah, they just call someone up from, like, you know, one of the Marvel movies 10 years ago. Hey, you want to make a really cool cameo in this show? Yeah, we'll pay you a bunch of money. Here you go. And it's like, how does that character get in here? Multiverse. You know, there was a nexus and they branched off. Super cool. Which is also giving me a lot of hope for the new Spider-Man movie that comes out. There's been rumors that all 3 Spider-Man are coming, or at least my boy Toby. So now I'm like, dude, if they're setting this up, that means that they can just be like, oh, you know, Toby, the nexus is that Toby ran off, and that's why he's with Andrew Garfield, and that's why he's with Tom Holland. And it's like, now we got all 3 Spider-Man here, dude, live action Spider-Verse. Oh, I can't wait. So I love multiverse shit, but yeah, 10 out of 10, absolutely blown away. Score, characters, action, setup, everything about it was amazing. I cannot wait till next week. Let's go. Okay, guys, that's it. That's Man of Mischief, episode 1, guys. So this is our Loki review show. Like I said, we're dropping the Reviewers Assemble covers. All of the Reviewers Assembles are live on the channel, so go check those out under Reviewers Assemble for the MCU review. Those are some of our earlier videos, so bear with us. The sound and the visual quality might not be up to par as much, but it's a good watch. Go check those out. We had a blast reviewing those, and watching this stuff, dude, I want to, like, immediately go back and already rewatch the Infinity Saga here. So thanks for checking out Project Potter, guys. Thanks for checking out Man of Mischief, the Loki review. Go check out the other content on the channel. Like, comment, subscribe. We got a big Celtics playoff game tonight. Probably going to be recording that right after this, so check that out for Raising 18. Good stuff, guys. I appreciate you guys stopping by, and until next time, guys, peace.